I would now like to briefly explain nagewaza, or throwing techniques. Of course, the way of throwing in Aikido is different from that of judo. Why is this the case? The judo way of throwing, which was developed by the Budo world, cannot be used in Aikido. In Aikido especially, the opponent is unbalanced through the use of Atemi. In the old days, in a real fighting situation, it was extremely difficult to defeat an opponent with a throw. At the beginning of the Meiji era in Asakusa, 2 judo practitioners got into a quarrel with many street toughs. What happened in that fight? The first and last opponents were thrown while all of the others were dispatched with Atemi. If we didn't use Atemi, we couldn't handle multiple adversaries. This is especially the case if the opponent has a bladed weapon like a knife. Therefore, Atemi are extremely important in throwing and pinning an opponent. Of course, in Aikido, there are many throws and pins, especially pinning movements. If we say that 60% of Aikido is pinning and 40% throwing techniques, then Atemi are used in all of them. In this case of a usual punch, we can avoid it, but we don't do it this way. What we do when the opponent punches is to enter directly. We are in this position. If you do it this way, the opponent will not fall down. In our way of doing the technique, when he attacks with shomen, we enter like this from below. So when he comes with a punch, we enter here directly. So naturally, this hand can't attack me either. He can't build up this point, so it doesn't endanger his life. He becomes unable to utter a word. I will return to this point later. We do shiho-nage like this. At this point, I have already entered. The usual way of doing it is like this, where you first parry his attack and then grab his wrist. One other explanation is that you initiate the movement, then parry his hand and grab. This is not acceptable as a martial technique. Because when you parry him here, he will attack with his other hand. You don't know how many times he will punch. So we execute this strike before parrying his attack. Then this is our second strike. This is the way we practice shiho-nage. We deal with the attack using a kino-nagare movement. This is the difference between our way of doing shiho-nage and the way it is done usually. In the usual form of shiho-nage, the strike is received. This is the usual shiho-nage. This probably describes the way it is done in 99% of the cases in Aikido. This is the way it's usually done in Japan and abroad. It's already been about 35 years since we stopped doing it that way. We have already taken our opponent's initiative. Block and counter. That's the way it's been done in Japanese martial arts for hundreds of years. That's the way it's done in fighting arts everywhere. You can't consider this way of doing it to be Aikido. Aikido doesn't need that way of doing things. You have to have already defeated your opponent before being touched. You can't attempt to grab after being struck. Our way of doing it is to enter, thus preventing him from striking. That's how we execute the movement. Our way of grabbing is different too. Usually, people enter like this, using this kind of movement. This is the way it looks from the front. In the usual way, you execute the movement after receiving the strike. We enter directly. The usual way is to first receive the attack and then enter. Our way of doing it is to already take the opponent's mind before receiving the strike. That's how we do it. This is how we enter. This is the form. In the case of a punch, naturally, we execute an Atemi here. We can't enter from this position, so we enter like this. In this case, while entering like this, we can execute a strike from this position. We do it this way. This is how it is done generally. They open and enter like this. This is a good way of doing it, but I think there are people who step forward this way. This is very dangerous. At present, the technique is often done this way, especially in executing empty-handed techniques. Practice which ignores the possibility of punches and kicks is not of value. So in our way of executing this technique, we treat the attack as if it were a punch. So we already have to have entered here when the opponent's body comes. Of course, he cannot reach me with either hand. This is the way irimi is done. This is the way it is done from the front angle. So when he punches, we enter like this. In a real situation, we would do this. Then we strike here. This is our method of training. This hand appears to be receiving the attack, but it is not. We enter like this and can execute these Atemi strikes. The attacker comes and we can immediately execute Atemi. If the attacker comes really hard, we lead him this way. We execute the movement this way against the attack. This is an application. And you have this movement. You have Atemi in all of these places. This is shiho-nage, as I have shown earlier. In this way of doing it, we enter here. In this version, we enter in this manner. We use the tegatana at the opponent's throat, and then we proceed. That's the way we perform shiho-nage. So we enter this way and complete the technique. If he punches, I come to his throat. Usually the hand is used to protect yourself. However, in Aikido this is not done. The hand which comes into contact with the opponent is used to draw him out. This technique is used when your opponent comes to punch. In karate, an Atemi is executed like this. but we move in this way against a punch. This hand is ready to attack against a punch. This time, I won't use this hand very much. I bring him around like this. The reason for this is we are treating it like a punching attack. We already enter. This is how we deal with the punch. We do it this way. In the case of Shomenuchi, we entered like this. In the technique from a punch, we do it like this. We do it this way against a punch. We use a reverse strike. That's how we handle this attack. In sports, that sort of thing is naturally prohibited because it's not a place you can strike. You can't toughen up that part of the body. However, from the martial arts standpoint, it is the natural thing to follow through completely with the technique. So here, we use this strike. We do it this way, and come here. It goes without saying that we enter here behind the opponent. We enter this way here, and then here. So it may be a punch or something else. Of course, you must already strike him when he comes. So we do it like this. So this movement comes over the opponent's head. This is the wrong way to do it. That's how they do it in karate. We're doing this to avoid the punch. We have to touch the opponent's body here. Actually, we must down the opponent before touching his fist. Therefore, we must bring our hand over his head. Because my hand is here, he can't punch or kick. So, of course, we enter here, and pin. Of course, we come to here, and while striking the opponent's jaw, we bring him here. Since we can't do that, we come here. The thumb comes here. Then you twist him around to here. It's necessary to do it this way for practice. Please understand the technique in this way. Here's another technique. This is a similar technique. This time you stay in contact with him and come here. Actually, you would do this. Or poke his eyes. You come into the jaw, and one hand pokes his eyes. It's extremely dangerous. You'll understand if you try pressing here. This is a vital point. If this is cut even a little, air comes gushing out. You can't survive for even a minute. This point here. If you are struck here even with the empty hand, it will be totally effective. So we enter from the left side, and then to here. You shouldn't pull. The opponent is controlled by his own body weight. You don't choke him with your hands. It happens by the opponent's own body weight. It's like being hanged. You are choked by your own body weight. It's the opponent's body weight. The way this is normally done in the Aikido world, like before, I would say in about 99% of the cases, is this way. This is one of the old ways of doing it in the martial arts world. You block and then enter. We do it differently. In Aikido, we enter with a strike before the opponent's attack reaches us. Usually it's done like this. This way is the beginner's way to do it, and it's not effective. Karate does it this way. Everybody does it this way. We don't have to do such things in Aikido. We have already taken our opponent's mind before he touches us. That is the Aikido way of doing it. We enter before the opponent touches us. This is how we execute the movement. There is a problem with this kiri-hanashi movement. Most people move like this and expose themselves to a punch. Actually, there's a striking movement. We enter straight. In reality, we move like this. We push him away and strike while exhaling. So when we push him away like this, he can't strike. And then we enter this way. We push his hand away with this Atemi. He's not able to punch with this hand. This is the way we execute the movement. We strike and enter this way. Once again. For this movement, if he comes with a punch, we enter immediately. We can enter from this position. Once you adopt this posture, your opponent can neither punch nor kick. When he comes to punch, actually we enter this way, stepping in completely. This time, we don't allow our hand to be grabbed. Aikido practitioners in general think that techniques are applied after Tori's hand is grabbed. But actually, Tori does not allow the opponent to grab his hand. The opponent cannot grab Tori's hand. It is usually thought that Tori begins his technique after his hand is grabbed, and that in Aikido, we try to find out how to take back our grabbed hand and defeat our opponent. But in fact, we are not grabbed, but offer our hand to the opponent. This is an expression of the spirit of Aikido, of giving and leading. This is done in the same manner as the Nikyo I explained earlier. Be sure to extend your hand in front of your opponent. This becomes an Atemi, or strike to a vital point. Lower your hips sufficiently. This is the movement. This is the same as the Nikyo I did earlier. Don't allow your hand to be grabbed. This is the application. I lead him from here into Sankyo. We changed our practice method about 35 years ago. We cannot develop techniques if we ignore the martial effectiveness of a movement. You must, of course, be able to employ a weapon using the same movement for a technique to be considered a true martial art. In our practice, we enter this way. so he can't reach us with a punch or kick. Through this position, we can avoid his punch. We enter this way. We can counter this way or this way. This is the basis of our movement. In our practice, we teach students to have already entered in front of the opponent as soon as they are grabbed. Here, he can't reach me. From here, we can enter right into his eyes. You enter with the feeling of enveloping your opponent. Actually, you can enter like this and strike to these points. With these things in mind, you can execute different applications. You could strike like this too. That's the feeling we have when doing the move. Here, from the lower position, we prevent a punch or kick, and these are movements from the upper position. And we can do this or this. That is the movement. When we practice the Jodan irimi, we execute it at tsuki or punch from this side. This time, however, we apply the tsuki like this. We enter from here. If you adopt this posture, you can't extend your hand. A characteristic of Aikido is that your opponent cannot enter to attack. In most martial arts, you stop the movement after being attacked, but in Aikido, we do not stop the attacker's movement. This movement is an irimi-nage. If we remain standing in this position, this happens. Now we move here, and this is the situation. This is irimi-nage. Many Aikido-ka think that what they are doing is irimi-nage, but this is the movement. This was the irimi from Gyakuhami. Now we are doing this irimi. If your feet are in the wrong position, it's different. If you come to this position, you want to do a karate movement. We do it from this position. So we don't need to do that. This is the irimi of Aikido. If we do not practice this movement, we will be defeated if we don't block the attack, as happens in karate, boxing, and kendo. However, because we execute this movement, it's not necessary. There's no problem even if we are contacted. We just did this movement, and you also have this variation. Although this is called a kime or joint lock, it is really an atemi, a strike. If you apply pressure, it becomes a joint lock. Basically, in Aikido, there are no gyaku or joint locks. But if you want to, you can apply a lock at any time. It is said that Aikido involves natural movements. Of course, this is necessary for martial arts. We must use natural movements at all times. This is part of our training. When we enter, we can execute Atemi to these points. You lead your opponent up and move your hand in front of him. Usually the hand is brought upward and you are open here. In our practice, we bring the opponent's hand in front of us, not upward. That is a difference in our practice. Most of the time people push here when they do Sankyo. Our way is the opposite. He can't attack here. And at this point, you can apply these strikes. You can execute these strikes.